So, uh, hello all. Thank you so much, Ketki, for giving this opportunity. Just a quick background. I'm Amog Dhamankar. Uh, by profession, I am a IT consultant. However, I have been kind of working and helping Ketki with a lot of her initiatives on Divine Chants. And that's where I just thought maybe we can do a double act today in terms of driving out the Bhakti Yoga. Big caveat, I am not an expert or anything like that in Bhakti Yoga. It is all in terms of the way I have understood and the way I have kind of tried to learn. So that's the whole kind of premise to it. So sincere apologies in terms of if you find something which you have got a bit more understanding, then please I welcome you to correct me, or in the group later you can kind of give us more information about it. So we are all sadhakas here, so we just want to ensure that we learn of each other, and I'm trying to give my perspective or my understanding. And then, of course, as I said, it is open to discussion, it is open to interpretations, and I would really love to hear your views as well. So that's the kind of caveat and the premise that I wanted to give. So today we are going to talk about Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga, as you all know, it's integral part of Bhagavad Gita. But Bhakti Yoga is something I think we as an individuals have started with since childhood. So we are some way or the other connected with Bhakti Yoga. Now at that age, we may not know the Navavidha Bhakti or forms of Bhakti or any kind of technicality behind it. But I'm sure when we were all growing up, we all have heard about the Leelas of Sri Krishna, or the stories of Ramayana, or the stories of Mahabharata, which is in a way trying to channelize our mind, our intellect towards the Supreme or towards the Lord. So this is kind of the background of Bhakti Yoga that we all have ingrained since our childhood. So the agenda today is what is Bhakti Yoga, what is Bhakti, and what is Bhakti Yoga. There are 9 forms of Bhakti as defined in Bhagavad Puran. So we will kind of take the first 3. We have got the sessions for we have got these 3 sessions. So there are 9, which kind of gives a good breakdown of having to discuss about 3 each in each of those sessions. Then there are 18 Bhakti Yoga shlokas. So we have again divided into 6 each, and then we will try to do a group practice. I know it's a bit jam-packed agenda with lots of things to discuss. So hopefully we should be trying to cover as much as possible today. Can everyone hear me and can everyone see the screens?
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So moving on. What is Bhakti and Bhakti Yoga? Now, Bhakti, according to the definition, is a devotional worship directed to one supreme deity, usually Vishnu or Shiva, by whose grace salvation or moksha may be attained, regardless of sex, caste, or any kind of biases. So Bhakti Yoga is literally the path of bhakti, which is a spiritual path or spiritual practice focused on loving devotion towards any personal deity. Now, the big advantage or the big mention here is the word personal deity. Personal deity. No. I don't know what is happening. Sorry about this. So, so what is Bhakti Yoga or Bhakti? Sorry, I was talking about personal deity. Now, as you have seen in the definition of Bhakti, generally it is incarnations of Vishnu or Shiva, but you will find across India there are so many deities that are worshipped. So if you go to West Bengal or you go to the eastern region, that's where there is a massive following for Kali Mata, or what they call as Shakti Bhakti. If you go down south, there is a large following for Kartikeya, who was a brother of Sri Ganesha. Now, Lord Ganesha is worshipped kind of throughout the whole India. So these are personal choices that are made by people in terms of how they connect with the Supreme, or what leelas or what stories or what uh, connections they have with the Supreme. Now, as you can see in the diagram, what I've tried to look at is this Bhakti Parampara has been going on in India since the Vedic period, since the Rishi Munis, but there are certain saints that have literally established themselves throughout India in terms of carrying forward this Bhakti and Bhakti Yoga tradition. So you can see right from the southern part of India towards the middle part, in terms of the central India, towards Jammu and Kashmir, or eastern parts of India, Guru Nanak in the west. We have all been blessed with saints that have taken this tradition of Bhakti Yoga forward. So as I said, this is something personally I can connect to, because this is Bhakti Yoga is one path of learning the Supreme, which I have been accustomed to since my childhood, and I'm sure is the experience for everyone as well. Now, Navavidha Bhakti, or 9 forms of Bhakti. So Srimad Bhagavat, and this is more coming from Bhakta Prahlad's Krishna's Leela in Narasimha Avatar, where Bhakta Prahlad says that there are 9 forms of Bhakti, and what he says is Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnoho, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakhyam Atma Nivedanam. Now, what are these 9 forms of devotion? Shravanam, hearing the names and glories of Lord; Kirtanam, chanting his glories; Smaranam, remembering the Lord; Padasevanam, serving Lord's feet; Archanam, worshipping the Lord; Vandanam, offering obeisance unto the Lord; Dasyam, serving the Lord as his servant; Sakhyam, developing friendship with the Lord; and Atma Nivedanam, which is total surrender to oneself or to the Lord. Now, interesting part of these 9 are, as I've said, that these 9 these are the stepping stones towards having oneness with the Supreme. So what you do is you first have, sorry, there's someone waiting in the lobby. So what you have is you first understand about the Lord in terms of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. Then you try to associate yourself with the Leelas of Lord, which is Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, where you are trying to offer your almost self, or Chitta, or Mana, or Buddhi to the God. And that is where you start developing the closeness, or you start climbing the ladder that goes close to the Lord. And then Sakhyam and Atma Nivedanam is something where you are almost touching the Lord's feet, and you are almost in oneness with the God. So those are the 9 forms of bhakti, how it starts from understanding, then self-offering, and then almost the embrace of the Lord. And today we are going to talk about the first 3 forms, which is Shravanam, Kirtanam, and Smaranam. Now, one thing is, Shravanam can be cultivated through regular satsangs by listening carefully to the words of wise and of the ancient seers, and also regularly listening to the teachings of scriptures. Now, what we have tried to do through this divine chanting is we all are going to come together, and we are going to think and learn and try to learn and basically also try to listen from the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, which is also a form of Shravanam. By hearing the stories of Lord's divine activities, the devotee's mind becomes purified with and from bad qualities such as lust, anger, greed, and envy. Now, the biggest example of Shravanam is Raja Parikshit. Now, Raja Parikshit, as given in Srimad Bhagavat, is a devotee who exemplified Shravanam. Due to a curse, Parikshit had only 1 week to live, but he attained salvation by listening to glories of Krishna in form of Srimad Bhagavat, as narrated by sage Sukha, in the forest of Naimisharanya. Now, what this means is, even by listening, but how to listen very attentively, very carefully, if you listen to the Leelas of Krishna or Shiva or Rama or your personal deity, you can still attain salvation, or you can go nearer towards the Lord Supreme. The second thing is Kirtanam. Now in the Kali Santarno, sorry, I have written the notes, so I'm kind of also reading it simultaneously. In Kali Santarnopanishad, in verse 5, you will find the first reference to the ISKCON movement, which is Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. So the verse 5 says, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. It is said that Kirtanam is the only way to achieve salvation in this Kali Yuga. Now, the same Kali Santarnopanishad, in verse 6, it further expands this verse and it says, Iti Shodashakam Namnam Kali Kalmashah Nashanam Natah Paratopayah Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. This means these 16 words. Now, what are these 16 words? If you count Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Now, these are the 16 words. The 16 words are especially meant for completely destroying all the contamination of Kali Yuga or the present Yuga. To save oneself from the evil effects of Kali Yuga, there is no alternative that can be found in the entire Vedas except chanting of this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That is what the verse 6 says. That is the power of Kirtanam. What does Kirtan do? Kirtan actually gives you a way of submersing yourself in the name of Lord. It tries to basically free you from the shackles of lust, anger, greed, envy, and it kind of tries to pave a path towards attaining that Lord's feet. So that is Kirtanam. Smaranam. Now, Smaranam is, according to Narsimha Puran, meditation focusing on lotus feet of Supreme is transcendental and beyond experience of material plane and pleasure. By such meditation, even one who is sinful can be delivered from all the sins he has committed in life. Now, we know a lot of examples of Smaranam, and the biggest example is Bhakta Prahlad himself, who was given this Navavidha Bhakti, where at every pain that his father Hiranyakashipu inflicted on him, the only Smaran or the remembrance that he did was Narayana. And at the end of the day, for his remembrance, Lord Vishnu came in avatar of Narasimha and he killed Hiranyakashipu and freed the whole kingdom from the Asura. Now, this is again the power of remembrance. But how do we remember? In a chitta which is very pious, completely focused towards the Lord. Now, these are the first three steps of the Navavidha Bhakti, which helps us in terms of creating a foundation towards going to the next step, which is more in terms of surrender to the God. So serving Lord's feet, worshipping Lord, offering obeisance, serving Lord as a servant are the next steps of Navavidha Bhakti. But Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam gives you a good foundation to move towards the next form of bhaktis. So hopefully Bhakti Yoga and Navavidha Bhakti has kind of got a deeper understanding in our lives, because sometimes I feel that Bhakti Yoga touches more commonly for all of us because we have been going through Bhakti Yoga since our childhood. So moving on to the next slide, I think Ketki, we want to start with Dhyana Shloka.
Yeah. So as our schedule is, we will start with first Dhyana Shloka for Bhakti Yoga, and then we will be looking at 6 Bhakti Yoga shlokas. So I will chant it and I will just read out the meaning. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kausachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. A guru is the one that dispels darkness in us. Who is a Jagat Guru? He who is beyond all divisions on earth due to geography,
Color. Color and culture.
okay, color and culture. Gita was given to mankind in general, and every living person is entitled to its wisdom. So now we will be starting with shlokas. Actually, there is one more Dhyana shloka. I will just chant it. Mukam karoti vachalam Pangum langhayate girim Yat krupatamaham vande Paramanandamadhavam. Atha Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu Bhakti Yoga Shloka Sangraha.
Thank you.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Chaturvidha bhajante mam Jana Sukrutinurjuna Arto Jidnyasurartharthi Jnani cha Bharatarshabha.
So here in this slok, what Lord Krishna says to Arjun is there are 4 types of bhakta who come to me for as a request. Now, what are these 4 types of bhakta? Artha, or the distressed. For some people, when the pot of worldly miseries become excessive, it leads them to conclude that running after the world is futile and it is better to take shelter in God. Likewise, when they see that the worldly supports are unable to protect them, they turn to God for protection. Now, Draupadi in Draupadi Vastraharan in Mahabharata is a classic example of Artha Bhakta, where when she sees that neither my husbands nor the learned people in the court nor the big kind of sardars like Bhishmacharya, Krupacharya, or gurus are not able to protect me, what she does, she takes shelter to God. She Artata is all about making sure that when you are distressed, the first person that you call is Bhagwan Shri Krishna. And she does exactly that. And that's where Bhagwan Shri Krishna comes and saves her from being basically insulted in the court. So that is the nature of the Artha Bhakta. Now, the other Bhakta, what Sri Krishna says is Jidnyasu, the seekers after knowledge. Some people take shelter of God out of curiosity to know. They have heard about others finding beatitude in spiritual realm, and this makes them curious to know what this is all about. So to satisfy that curiosity, they approach Lord. Now, Uddhava was a Jidnyasu. Uddhava was Krishna's friend and from Gokul, and he approached Krishna asking him to give him what is the existence, what is the nature of existence. And that's where Krishna told him, even before the Gita was told to Arjuna, there is a Uddhav Gita, which means the knowledge or the Jnana Yoga was given by Krishna to Uddhava, and that was part of the Jidnyasu Vritti that Uddhava had displayed. So Jidnyasu is seeker of knowledge, seeker after knowledge. Artharthi. Artharthi means the seeker of worldly possessions. Another kind of people are very clear about what they want, but they are convinced that only the Lord can provide them, and thus they go to for shelter. Now, in case of Ramayana, when Sugriva wanted his kingdom back from the demon Vali, he went to Lord Ram and asked for help. Or similarly, Dhruva wanted to have a kingdom where his stepmother would not trouble him and ill-treat him. So what he did was he went directly to the Supreme and asked his help. But what was the reason of that help? Because they wanted something back from that help. So those are the three, and I'm stopping here consciously because those are the three type of bhaktas, what we call as Sakama Bhakta. Now, Sakama Bhakta means people who want something in return. In Artata, they want to be away from the distress. In Jidnyasu, they want to learn something. They want to understand something from the Lord. Or in terms of Artharthi, they want to have something back in terms of their kingdom, their material position. Someone has robbed them and they want them something back. So these are Sakama Bhakta. Now I think 99% of us can be in one of these three categories, because what generally we go to Lord is for something. So I want happiness in life. I want a new job. I want XYZ. And that's why we go to the Lord, and hopefully with his blessings, we get what we want. Now, there is nothing wrong in being Sakama Bhakta, but the only remembrance that you have to do is you have to surrender yourself to the God, even while you are asking for any help, support from him. So Artha, Jidnyasu, Artharthi are all Sakama Bhakta who want something back from Lord, but they have gone to Lord with a complete feeling of surrender, with a complete surrender to his authority. And that's why with his blessings, he has got what they want. Now, the fourth one is Jnani, or those who are situated in knowledge. Finally, there are souls who have reached the understanding that they are tiny parts of the God and their eternal dharma is to love and serve them. Sri Krishna says that these are the fourth kind of people who engage in his devotion. Sukha Maharaj was a Jnani Bhakta. He realized everything was his own self. He taught Srimad Bhagavat to King Parikshit, as we have previously discussed as well. So Jnani Bhakta is someone who understands that who understands the concept of Aham Brahmasmi, Satchidananda, Tattvamasi. He understands these Vedanta philosophy, and that's where he goes to God in pure devotion, in pure love, with an intention to serve him. And that's the bhakta that Sri Krishna says is most dearer to us. But one thing which we have to again understand is Bhagwan Sri Krishna does not kind of compare anyone against anyone. He treats Artha, Jidnyasu, Artharthi in the same way that he treats a Jnani Bhakta. He fulfills all the wishes, all the kamanas of all the four Bhakta categories or Bhakta types. But what he says was, one who comes with pure love and pure devotion is someone who does not expect anything back from me, is the one who is very dear to me, and he is Jnani. And there is also a fifth category of Bhakta, which is called as Vairi Bhakta. Now, Vairi Bhakta, how can Vairi be a Bhakta? Now, this means these Bhaktas are negative Bhakta. They do not have positive devotion for God. They hate God, and thus they remember him always. Hatred also requires a constant remembrance of enemy. Now, sometimes when you are going saying that I'm not going to think about this situation, what you end up 99% is you keep on thinking about the situation, about the person day in, day out, because you have said that I'm not going to talk about this person, or I'm not going to basically have any connection towards the person. Now that is a negative scale of bhakti. However, there have been cases where the negative bhaktas have also attained salvation because the Lord himself has incarnated to come and kill them, and thus they have attained salvation through the Vairi Bhakta. Now, again, as I said, Kamsa, Shishupal, or Hiranyakashipu, they are all kind of manifestations of this Vairi Bhakta, where they hated Sri Krishna or they hated Vishnu to the core, to so extent that they kept on thinking, remembering Vishnu almost every second, all the time. And that resulted in Vishnu actually coming in one of his incarnations to kill them. And thus they also attained moksha. But again, Krishna doesn't say that you have to be a Vairi Bhakta. Please try to be between the four. And if you want to be really dearer to me, try to serve me with utmost love and utmost passion, and I will be more dearer to these Jnani Bhakta. So that's the part of Shlok 1.
Yeah, so these Jnani Bhaktas can be Nishkama Bhaktas.
Correct. So as I said, the first three are Sakama Bhakta, where they are expecting something from Lord. However, Jnani Bhakta is Nishkama Bhakta because what he wants to do is just serve Lord out of his love, out of his devotion. So we all should strive to be part of Nishkama Bhakta. But again, as I said, there is no one is up, down, or anything. That there is no hierarchy in this. You can be a Sakam Bhakta, but you have to completely surrender to God when you're asking something from God. So we move to the next shloka.
Teja Kshama Dhrutir Shaucham Adroho Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata.
Now, this shloka from the 16th chapter, there are two more shlokas before this. So 16.1, 16.2, 16.3. Now, this three verses have to be taken in combination because Sri Krishna gives us the 26 virtues of a saintly person. Now, and he expects that these should be cultivated as a part of our spiritual practice for elevating ourselves to the supreme goal. So whilst we have written the 6 here in this third verse, I will quickly go through the remaining 20 which are in 16.1, 16.2, and we will of course cover this 16.3. So these are the 26 virtues of a saintly nature. Abhay, which is fearlessness. Sattva Samshuddhi, which is purity of mind. Compassion, which is daya. Steadfastness in spiritual knowledge, which is Jnana Yoga Vyavya Sthiti. charity, which is dana, control of senses, which is dhamma, performance of sacrifice, which is yajna, study of sacred books, which is swadhyaya, austerity, which is tapaha, straightforwardness, which is arjavam. Now, straightforwardness does not mean that you demean anyone. Straightforwardness is you say what it is, say the truth, and it almost kind of looks at simple living, high thinking philosophy. Ahimsa, non-violence. Satya, truthfulness. Akrodha, absence of anger. Now again, absence of anger does not mean that you are weak. Absence of anger means that detachment and surrender to the will of God, one can overcome the anger. So it does not necessarily mean that you are weak by any means of imagination. Tyaga, which is renunciation. Shanti, which is peacefulness. Apaishnunam, which is restraint from fault finding. Now, this is very important because the first thing that whenever we are talking about a person who is not present, the first thing we talk about is his faults. You know what happened? I met him and he did this, these things. But hardly ever we kind of say he's such a lovely person, he's such a good person. But generally our tendency is to have the fault finding. And what Lord Krishna says, this is not a virtue of a saintly person. Alolupta, which is absence of covetousness. Mardava, which is gentleness. Ri, which is modesty. And achapalam, which is lack of fickleness. Now these are the 20, and now we will talk about the 6 in this shloka. Vigor. From the purity of mind comes a deeper inner drive to act according to one's values and beliefs. Hence, saintly persons bring immense power and vigor to the task that they pursue. Now, one of the examples of vigor is, of course, Shivaji Maharaj, who basically had the Hindavi Swaraj in the 16th century. And his guru, Santa Ramdas, gave a very nice kind of rendering of vigor. What he said was, Swaye Shastra Deshartha Hati Dharave, Pitave Ripula Rani Va Marave, Tujha Rakshana Tucha Siddha Hoi, Sada Sankati Deva Dhauna Yei. What does this mean is, take weapons in your hand for protecting your land or country. Beat your enemy in the battlefield or die while doing it. Protect yourself. You have to be ready, and then only God will always come running to protect you. But that vigor, that display of vigor has to come from you. And then, of course, God is going to help you. God is definitely going to save you. Forgiveness. Moving on to forgiveness. This is the ability to tolerate the offense of others without feeling the need to retaliate. Through forgiveness, one heals the emotional wounds caused by others that would otherwise fester and disturb the mind. With greater power comes greater responsibility is a very well-known phrase, but forgiveness is not when you are in a position of power. The forgiveness is one such virtue that you should display, because you can actually give him the shasan, or you can actually give him the punishment, but you choose to give forgiveness, and that's what is expected from a saintly virtue. So again, forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. Forgiveness is a sign when you have the power to punish, but you choose not to punish him, and basically not to get disturbed by his actions or her actions, but choose to forgive him. Fortitude. It is an inner strength and determination in pursuing the goal, even when the mind and the senses veer due to unfavorable circumstances. Most of the important things in world have to be accomplished by people who kept on trying when there seemed to be no hope at all. Now, again, fortitude is something which you can see a lot of inspirational talks where you will find that absolutely walls against the back against the walls, and you will find a spirit or a sparkle, which is none other than fortitude, which helps he or she in overcoming any grief, in overcoming any challenges of life. And Sri Aurobindo put this very eloquently, saying that you have to be more persistent than the difficulty, and there is no other way. You have to score one goal over your difficulties, and that's how you will definitely defeat difficulties. Cleanliness. Now it refers to both internal and external purity. Virtuous people believe in maintaining external cleanliness because it is conducive to internal. Now, Santa Tukaram said, Deha Devache Mandira, Ata Atma Ishvara. That means this body is the temple of God. Inside is the God in form of soul. So you have to not only be pure outside in terms of taking good care of your body, but because God resides inside within you, you also have to be internally pure as well. Talking of pure cleanliness, there was a saint called Sant Gadge Baba in Maharashtra who was very well known for giving lessons of cleanliness, which is Samaj cleanliness, cleanliness of the villages to everyone around Maharashtra. And I think there is a award in his name given to the best cleaned village of Maharashtra. I think it is called as Santa Gadge Baba Swachhata Award or something like that. But that is how the virtuousness of a saintly person is cleanliness. Cleanliness in internal, cleanliness external, and also cleanliness in speech and in business. Now, this is very, very difficult because most of the time we generally talk, our speech sometimes is so rough that it may kind of give a harshness to the person listening, and that's where cleanliness in speech is very important as well. Bearing enmity towards none. Now, bearing enmity towards none, towards others, poisons our own mind, and this becomes an impediment in path of spiritual progress. The quality of freedom from hatred towards others is developed by realizing that they are also like us and God resides in them as well. Now, Sant Dnyaneshwar, in his Pasayadan, in his prayer, he eloquently puts bearing enmity towards none as Ze Khalanchi Venkati Sando, Taya Satkarmi Rati Vado, Bhuta Paraspare Pado, Maitra Jivanse. What does this mean? May the evil-minded their weakness shed. May their intellect turn to pious and good deeds instead. May all living beings find themselves bonded by friendly ties of soulful companionship. Now, this is ultimate example of bearing enmity towards none, where Sant Dnyaneshwar is praying that everyone please have a friendly tie of soulful companionship. The next one is absence of vanity. Self-praise, boastfulness, ostentation, etc. are all stem from pride. Saintly personalities see nothing in themselves to be proud about, but instead feel gratitude to God for good qualities they possess. Now, again, if you go through these 26 qualities, sometimes you may feel that we have got possibly none, or we have got 26 in varying proportions. Now, what Bhagwan Krishna is expecting is that every janma that you take or every life that you have got, try to come closer towards me. What does that mean? That in every life, can you pick up one saintly virtue, be true to that virtue, and make sure that you completely have the mastery over that saintly virtue, which takes you closer towards him or his supremacy. And that's what is expected from us as a human being. Now, why saintly virtues have been discussed here? Because we as human beings have got satsat viveka buddhi, or we have got the ability of reasoning. Now animals don't have that ability, so they will be in the primitive way of survival or killing or to be killed, that kind of mentality. But human beings have got this ability for reasoning that ensures that you can inculcate these 26 qualities in you. And again, going back to Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, these the practice of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam will help you in identifying those 26 qualities within yourself and then trying to understand this one quality that I want to inculcate. You don't want to be doing 26 qualities at one point in time. It is completely not possible because we are still in our mada, moha, matsa, lust, anger. We are still bounded by this shadripus or six enemies. But again, how to break those? Take one virtue, and as Aurobindo said, fortitude. Have a fortitudeness towards one virtue and overcome that difficulty. And I'm sure by doing that, you will slowly progress towards these 26 virtues. So that's the meaning of 16.1, 2, and 3, which Bhagwan Sri Krishna says that there are 26 virtues, saintly virtues.
Dambho darpobhimanascha krodhah parushyameva cha ajnanam chabhijatasya partha sampadamasurim.
Now, Sri Krishna for me is the greatest psychiatrist, psychologist in terms of reading the mind and basically working towards positivity in mind. So all the mindfulness coaches, the sightfulness coaches that we see today, I think they all are manifestations of Lord Krishna himself. Why I say so is because in this shloka, Sri Krishna talks about the demonic virtues. What he said is 26 virtues are fine, but what are the virtues that define you as a demon is something that these virtues are. Now, what he kind of tries to balance out here is that whilst there are saintly virtues, there are some demonic virtues that you have to be aware of. Again, it's all about creating the awareness first. If you're not aware of your shortcomings, how are you going to overcome them? So he says that these are the good things, these are the bad things. Now use your satsat viveka buddhi, use your reasoning to make sure that where you want to go. Do you want to follow the 6 or you want to follow the 26? That's how he works on our mind, by giving us these virtues of demonic as well. Otherwise, Sri Krishna could have just completely chose not to say anything and say, okay, Arjuna, just follow these 26 and you should be coming closer to me. But what he said was, what is the abstinence of this? What you should abstain from are those 6. What they say is dambha, hypocrisy, darpa, arrogance, abhimana, conceit or self-importance, krodha, anger, parusham, harshness, ajnanam, ignorance. Now, Samartha Ramdas in his Dasabodh has in second chapter, he has given the examples, or he has given the qualities of what he terms as Murkha Lakshana. Now, Murkha Lakshana are nothing but explanation of these 6 demonic virtues. And what he says, what Sant Ramdas says is, Lakshane apara sati pari kahi ek yathamati त्यागार्थ बोलिले श्रोत्री क्षमा केले पाहिजे. अशी मूर्ख लक्षणे पुष्कळ आहेत. There are so many qualities that can be termed as मूर्ख or that can be termed as demonic. त्यातली काही माझ्या बुद्धीस सुचली, that some that I could remember of, or my intellect could remember of, ती लोकांनी त्यागावी म्हणून येथे सांगितली. So that people can actually abstain, I have told it here. And you won't believe there are, I think, 73 verses before this verse. This is the 73rd. So there are 72 verses in which he has explained the demonic qualities. And you will be surprised that at least I can talk on my terms that I think 72 out of 72, I think I can relate some to me, and that's where I have to make sure that I keep on having one eye towards the 26 saintly virtues and try to reduce these demonic virtues. Now, I think Duryodhana kind of eloquently put it in terms of why he is Asura. Now, Asura means Asushu as in Indriya. Asushu Ramante Yete Asuraha is the definition of Asura. And what Duryodhan says, Janami dharmam nacha me pravrutti, janamya adharmam nacha me nivrutti, which means I know what is dharma or I know what is righteousness, yet I cannot get myself to follow it. I know what is adharma or non-righteousness, and yet I cannot retire from him. Now, I think we all can relate to this shloka. I'm not implying that everyone is Duryodhan here, but this is what we have to make sure that righteousness means those 26 virtues. Adharma means those 6 virtues that Krishna says, and we have to make sure that we come away from these 6 demonic virtues. That's the meaning of this shloka. Moving on.
Daivi sampadvimokshaya nibandhaya surimata mashucha sampadam daivim abhijatosi pandava.
Now, what he says was the divine qualities lead to liberation, while demonic qualities are cause for a continuing destiny of bondage. Grieve not, O Arjun, as you were born with saintly virtues. Now, this is again psychology of this whole Lord Sri Krishna, how Lord Sri Krishna again plays with the mind of Arjun towards positivity. He gives the characters of demons, he gives the characters of saintly virtues. But what he also says to Arjuna is, oh Arjun, you don't worry, because you were born with the saintly virtues. So he gives a boost to Arjuna saying that don't get bogged down by these 26, don't get bogged down by these negative 6. You are born by these saintly virtues and keep doing what you have been doing up until now. Now, why was Arjun born with saintly qualities? Because Arjuna throughout his life up until this war of Kurukshetra and also beyond, he displayed Dayashilta, which is clemency or compassion. He displayed Shaucha, which is purity in thoughts. He displayed endurance, which is Sahanashilata, and he was Nyayi, or he was absolute just. Now, these qualities were already present in Arjuna, and that's why Krishna gives him the boost, saying that, oh Arjuna, you are already born with these saintly virtues, so don't bother to grieve or don't get scared of 26, 6, whatever it is. You can basically overcome your negative qualities and you can attain liberation. Now, this is a very interesting shloka where we all know Satchidananda. Sat means I want to be immortal. Chit means I want to be learned. Anand means I want to be happy. Now, unfortunately, when Sat, Chit and Ananda gets related to body or the material or the Jadatva, that's where we start to move away from our original self of being the divine soul of Paramatma. And that's what Sri Krishna says here, that the divine qualities lead to liberation, while demonic qualities are the cause of continuous destiny of bondage. That means your Sat, Chit and Ananda are related to either a person or a community or related to Jada things like your house, your property, your wealth, and that's where you're moving away from the self. or the real self. Now, there are four types of Purushartha that have been discussed in the Hindu philosophy: Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. Now, I'll just kind of give you the what is the Daivi and the Asuri display of those Purushartha. So, talking of Artha, when you do, Artha means money or Artha means possession. When you do the karma for possession of money or possession of things, that becomes an Asuri Purushartha. When it becomes a Daivi Purushartha, when you use the same money for charity, that's where you will do the Daivi Purushartha. Kama or desires. When your desires are displayed for materialistic pleasures, that's where you have got the Asuri. For sorry.
I think someone is waiting in the lobby.
Is it?
Yeah.
So, dharma, performing yajna for enemy's demise. Now, this is very important to understand. When you say dharma, I am performing yajna. Now, which is very good. Yajna has to be performed for because you basically surrender yourself to the God. But what is the hetu? What is the real reason behind doing the dharma? Is it the demise of the enemies? And if it is demise of the enemies, then you are performing a demonic activity. So dharma or an asuri activity. However, doing the yajna for seeking the blessings of whole mankind is a daivi display of dharma. Moksha, not performing actions which manifest 26 qualities as said by Krishna, is an asuri behavior, and trying to walk the path of saintliness is the daivi character. So this is what this shloka means when when Lord Krishna says that divine qualities lead to liberation and demonic qualities lead to bondage.
Nantosti mama divyanam vibhutinam parantapa esha tuddeshatah proktah vibhute vistaro maya.
There is no end to my divine manifestations, O conqueror of enemies. What I have declared to you is a mere sample of my infinite glories. Now, again, this verse has to be taken into consideration with the previous verses of the 10th chapter, where Krishna says the manifestations of his forms in across the universe, or what we call as Vishwarupa Darshan. And what he says in this particular slok is a conclusion that that there is no end to my divine manifestations. I have declared to you a mere sample of my infinite glories. Now, infinite glories, if you look at it, I haven't written because there are about 28 or 30 manifestations that he has done. So he is Airavat between the elephants. He is Nilkamal. He is Kamadhenu between the cows. So what he says is the best, the purified version of any human being, any animal, any worldly pleasures. The purified version is the manifestation of Lord Krishna himself. The question can be asked that if everything is opulence of God, then what was the need of mentioning these? The answer is that Arjuna had asked Sri Krishna how he should think of him, and these glories have been described in response to Arjuna's question. The mind is naturally drawn to the specialities, and thus Lord has revealed these specialities amongst his powers. Whenever we see a special splendor manifesting anywhere, if we look on it as God's glory, then our mind will naturally be transported to him. In larger scheme of things, however, since God's glories are in all things big and small, one can think of the whole world as providing innumerable examples for enhancing our devotion. There is a paint company in India who advertise as whenever you see colors, think of us. And in this case, Sri Krishna's statement is wherever you see manifestation of glory, purity, think of me. So what I can do is maybe we can send on our group those manifestations in shloka, I think 32 to 38. And this is, as I said, the conclusion of those in terms of wherever you see purity, wherever you see excellence, that is where you will always have a manifestation of us. So of me as in that form. So that is the meaning of shloka 5.
Yadyad vibhuti bhatsatvam Shrimadurjitameva va Tattadevavagachatvam Mama tejonsha sambhavam.
Whatever you see as, basically Sri Krishna continues his manifestations. Whatever you see as beautiful, glorious or powerful, know it to spring from a spark of my splendor. Again, what he says is, whatever you see the best in this world, please make sure that these are the manifestations of myself in this world. Now, again, what does that mean? That it's not necessarily that we every time will see Lord Sri Krishna in his form as we expect. So there is a peacock feather, there is a basuri or a flute. He is in the pale blue color. No, that is not the manifestation. That is one form of manifestation, but you will find that the saints are indeed the manifestations of the God itself, because they are beautiful, they are glorious, they are powerful, and they are the true self and the true reflection of Lord Sri Krishna himself. Electricity flowing through a speaker creates the sound, but one who does not know the principle behind how it works may think that the sound comes from the speaker itself. Similarly, when we observe an extraordinary splendor anywhere, whatever catches our imagination sends us in raptures and infuses us with a bliss. We should know that it to be but a spark of the glory of God. He is infinite reservoir of beauty, glory, power, knowledge, and opulence. He is the powerhouse from where all beings and things get their splendor. Thus, we must make God, who is the source of all glory, the object of our worship. Thus, these 6 shlokas absolutely are, as I said, the foundation of Bhakti Yoga. Once you understand what is God, what are the manifestations of God, what are the saintly virtues, what are the demonic virtues, that is where you are preparing yourself as a sadhaka, as a bhakta, to start attaining the Navavidha Bhakti, or start climbing the steps of that Navavidha Bhakti to go towards the Brahman. So those are the first 6 shlokas that we have learned today, which gives you a strong foundation for entering into more intricacies of Bhakti Yoga that we will talk about in the next lecture.
Yeah. Excellent, Amol. You have explained it so well with a lot of examples, which has really made it easier to relate to and to understand it in a better way. Can you just... Someone is in the lobby. So now we will do our group practice of all the shlokas. So you can unmute your calls and feel free to chant after. We'll start with the Dhyana shloka. So I just forgot to put one more Dhyana shloka here. So we'll try to chant both of them. I will start and you repeat after me. Vasudeva Sutam Devam.
Vasudeva Sutam Devam.
Kausachanuramardanam.
Kausachanuramardanam.
देवकी परमानन्दम्
देवकी परमानन्दम्
कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्
कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्
मूकं करोति वाचालम्
मूकं करोति वाचालम्
पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिम्
पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिम्
यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे
यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे
परमानन्दमाधवम्
परमानन्दमाधवम्
अथ श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु
अथ श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु
भक्तियोगश्लोकसङ्ग्रहः
भक्तियोगश्लोकसङ्ग्रहः
श्रीभगवानुवाच
श्रीभगवानुवाच
चतुर्विधा भजन्ते माम्
चतुर्विधा भजन्ते माम्
जना सुकृतिनोऽर्जुन
जना सुकृतिनोऽर्जुन
आर्तो जिज्ञासुरर्थार्थी
आर्तो जिज्ञासुरर्थार्थी
ज्ञानी च भरतर्षभ
ज्ञानी च भरतर्षभ
तेजक्षमा धृतिर्शौचम्
तेजक्षमा धृतिर्शौचम्
अद्रोहो नातिमानिता
अद्रोहो नातिमानिता
भवन्ति सम्पदं दैवीम्
भवन्ति सम्पदं दैवीम्
अभिजातस्य भारत
अभिजातस्य भारत
दम्भो दर्पोऽभिमानश्च
दम्भो दर्पोऽभिमानश्च
क्रोधः पारुष्यमेव च
क्रोधः पारुषमेव च
अज्ञानं चाभिजातस्य
अज्ञानं चाभिजातस्य
पार्थसम्पदमासुरीम्
पार्थसम्पदमासुरीम्
दैवी सम्पद्विमोक्षाय
दैवी सम्पद्विमोक्षाय
निबन्धायासुरीमता
निबन्धायासुरीमता
मा शुचः सम्पदं दैवीम्
मा शुचः सम्पदं दैवीम्
अभिजातोऽसि पाण्डव
अभिजातोऽसि पाण्डव
नान्तोऽस्ति मम दिव्यानाम्
नान्तोऽस्ति मम दिव्यानाम्
विभूतीनां परन्तप
विभूतीनां परन्तप
एष तुद्देशतः प्रोक्तः
एष तुद्देशतः प्रोक्तः
विभूते विस्तरो मया
विभूतिर्विस्तरो मया
यद्यद् विभूतिमत्सत्त्वम्
यद्यद् विभूतिमत्सत्त्वम्
श्रीमदूर्जितमेव वा
श्रीमदूर्जितमेव वा
तत्तदेवावगच्छत्वम्
तत्तदेवावगच्छत्वम्
मम तेजोंश संभवम्.
मम तेजोष संभवम्.
Very good. So if any one of you want to repeat any shloka, we can again, go back and do the practice. Or individually, if you want to try any one of the shloka, go ahead. Or even if there are any questions, please ask.
I think it's.
Yeah. So if there are no questions,
sorry, just before that. So again, as I said, I am not an expert on Bhakti Yoga. What I have tried to do is based on my learning, my experiences before, and of course, trying to give you a bit more flavor from the Bhakti Marga or the Vaishnava Marga of which is practiced in Maharashtra, the Santa Parampara. So hopefully you have kind of liked what we have discussed here, but I would also like to know more about Bhakti Yoga based on your experiences. So please feel free to interact in our group, in our Divine Chants group, in terms of anything that you want to further expand on these 6 shlokas, and your feedback will definitely help me and Ketki, of course, and everyone on the call in terms of our learning and understanding with help of each other. So please, if you have got any questions, I will try and answer those questions to the best of my knowledge, but please put it on the group so that anyone who has got more experience can also shed some more light on this. So please, hopefully you found this today's session interesting. And thank you, Ketki, for giving this opportunity for Bhakti Yoga.
Thank you, Amog. So is it okay? Shall we end the session here, or do you want any practice for any shloka, or do you have any questions? If not, we will end the session here. All right. So thank you everyone for joining the call, and see you next month on the second Saturday with next 6 shlokas. All right. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amog. Thank you, Ketki.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Amog and Kitty. Bye.
Bye.